I take as the subject of my study the mutability of perception, using the window as ideogram, with brief reference to the implacability of hope and its bearing on visuality. This will lead necessarily to a discussion on delusion, obsession, and self-destruction, which we will reach in due time. We begin with some fundamental questions. What is the window? And what functions does the window perform? As all rigorous scholars do, we begin by consulting that revered institution, the Oxford English Dictionary. Window, they define, as an opening in the wall or roof of a building for admitting light or air and allowing people to see out. A further definition reveals that window may also be synecdochal in usage, meaning a pane of glass or a similar transparent substance filling a window frame, a window pane. These definitions one may test against the various objects available to us that are known to be windows, this city containing many good examples, and find them more or less true. An opening, yes, perhaps a glass apparatus, but this term encompasses a shocking variety of shapes and sizes, even colors. Window dissolves all discrete instances of window into a vast conception of windowness. In hopes of finding something more cohesive, we enter upon the second of my questions. What are the window's functions? The previous definitions offer an apparently straightforward answer to this as well, for admitting light or air and allowing people to see out. These functions, light, air, vision, center the window's ability to open. One world, on one side of the window, gains access to another. Light, air, even sound is projected to the inner cell. Movement is enabled from outside to inside. For the moment, we will assume that this exchange occurs primarily in that direction. Thus, the inside is afforded a broadening of perspective, contact with new sense data. This facilitated interaction is the primary, if not the only, we shall consider this later, function of the window in the eyes of the majority of window makers and users. It is aligned with possibility. We now construct the scene, incorporating the human element. A room with a window. Within the room, a person. The person looks out the window. The person sees. The person sees, one thinks, what is beyond the room. And hovering always between the person and what lies beyond, the pane of glass. We shall say at first that this pane is perfectly unblemished and undistorted. What is seen through the pane is an unblemished and undistorted vision of the beyond. And yet, any pane of glass, however clear and unwarped, is still a barrier. And should the pane be warped, should it be burdened by irregularities, slightly too thick in places and thin in others, should the dust have gathered too heavily upon it, what then? The person would look out and would likely be not too encumbered by these distortions, for the person's powers of conception and construction are manifold, and one cannot expect a matter of millimeters to obstruct the infinitely clearer vision of reason. This, one should say, is the normal working condition of the normal working mind. Distortions may exist, but reason soon undistorts. At least, that is what we must believe if things are to continue running smoothly. But what if the existence of the person within the room were something more like those prisoners of the Platonic cave? What if, having never caught a glimpse of the world in which a pane of glass did not intervene, the person took the warpings of the window for the warpings of the world? That reality must be in some degree different from that of those who claim to have a belief in reason and true vision as their allies. And is this difference perceived? Or are we, each of us, so thoroughly enclosed within the cell of ourselves that such differences in perception are not accounted for. But the metaphor crumbles. The metaphor was imperfect from the start. Many windows. The point, you may say, of many windows is that they can be opened. You can see the view without the pain between you and it. So I suppose I haven't fleshed this out very well. Though open windows, closed windows.
He put his arm around her waist and you could just tell he didn't even know what you were doing. He was so drunk. And she was like, what? And he was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Are you okay? Are you okay? I just need some air. Okay, let's go outside. Come on, let's go outside. Let's go outside. Whoa!
The window, by its very nature, destabilizes the border between interior and exterior. Does the view become a fixture of the interior? Does an open window transform a room into the outdoors? What is inside and what is outside? This we may ask ourselves, going about, projecting ourselves onto our environment, allowing conception, so colored by personality, to interweave disparate threads. Is what is inside outside? But to invert the scene, we have discussed how a window allows the private individual to gaze out and observe the goings-on of their personal outdoors. Interesting, though, that this interaction is not meant to go the other way. This is not, one finds, sanctioned by our earlier definitions of the window. The person outside, gazing into a window, is not considered, like their inverse, to be opening their perspective. Rather, they become a peeping Tom, a voyeur. We can try our hand at this scene, questioning all the time whether this is some type of perversion. The person stands outside the window. The person attempts to look in. In, not out. There is the vital difference. There the danger lies. The person looks in. A dark object beheld behind the window. It looks like a person, standing somewhat in the center of the room, but its lack of movement, unsettling. Can a person stand so very still? No, it resembles actually a coat hung on the far wall. But it has shifted. A person, then. Or maybe a breeze has ruffled the coat, or maybe the viewer has made an unconscious jolt of the body and has mistaken their movement for the movement of the object. In all cases, the perception of the object has not changed. The imagination, fed by the ambiguity of imperfect vision, threads together not only a distinct object, but a narrative. All conception makes use of this kind of creativity, for it fabricates knowns out of unknowns. Whether this is based on personal preference or on pattern, it is yet guesswork. though some forms of guesswork we deem generally more palatable than others. A tangent. Think of the routines that are measured by windows, the turning on and turning off of lights, the drawing of curtains, the airing of a room, and add to that the passing of the silhouette before the opening of its cell. If one fixed oneself before an inhabited window, one could track a human life, comings and goings, awakenings and retirings. But of course, things would be missed. Are the two figures gathered behind the window enemies or lovers? And do they argue, or do they embrace? What does one hold in their hand? Are they, as we have questioned before, even people? And so, how much knowledge could we claim of this beheld inhabitant? That we know, sometimes, when they turn their light on, when they draw the curtains. The rest is speculation, conception, as I've said. One infers from the scant observation of a curtain opened and then a curtain drawn that there must be hands performing the opening and the drawing, hands attached to a human being. But let us stop at the hands. With what tenderness, we speculate, do they attend the openings and closings of the curtains? The softness with which they approach, the parting like flesh handled by a lover. And this we have concluded only from the opening and closing of curtains. Concluded, I should say, constructed. For construction is what it is, though it confronts one with the weight of reality. This imagined intimacy, so palpable as the mind lights upon it, is nothing but the clever molding of shadows. The window's relationship to possibility has this more sinister corollary. For to say possibility is necessarily to call up something amorphous, something not concretized, not entirely known. And such mutability the clear window apparently derides. The broadening horizons beheld through the window are solid, or so the window leads us to expect. But to allow possibility is also to allow mutability, and so the window also allows an opening onto things unknown, things shifting. When we have spent such time in looking into others' windows, what becomes of ourselves? The subject is dissolved into the object. Perception is eaten by the perceived. And where did the barrier lie to begin with? In front of the subject or in front of the object? Is there a difference, and does it matter? We have, at any rate, been lost, devoured by the objects we beheld. Our imperfect perception becomes inseparable from the thing itself as it becomes inseparable from us. The imagined becomes the real. Does not everyone, in small ways, commit this very crime? It is scarcely possible to step outside of one's chamber or to conceive of a reality beyond what is seen from one's personal window. Imagination, offering the only freedom, teaches one to think of the world in terms that are more agreeable to oneself, in spite of pretensions to objectivity. It is hope, or something like it, that asks something, always, of perception. Hope, which, despite its sentimentalism, is as rigid as the window pane forcing itself before the eye. I do not mean to imply that perception is endlessly malleable. One runs up against reality at some time or other. But it is the office of hope to always ask something more, and so I could not neglect it in this discussion. It remains whether or not what we ask of it is something that it is willing to give. I have said that this discussion of windows would lead necessarily to the topic of obsession. The link may not be as clear as I had assumed. Windows inspire routines, and routines border on the obsessive. No, the jump is not quite there. Our boundedness to our own conception, which the image of the window exemplifies. I would venture to say that obsession is, at its heart, about control, a misunderstanding of the nature of the link between inside and outside. All vision through the window is but a half confrontation of either. The barrier provides an alibi for this misunderstanding. A sense of unreality pervades. Anything is possible. Anything justified. Because we do not know, we cannot see. Finally, the window is the illusion of proximity. It goads us into thinking of how close we might be to those things we dream of. But the barrier, which we had forgotten about for a moment, interposes itself again. Of the person held within the window, you have neither knowledge nor true beliefs. You have only appearances, appearances that feed the mind's infinite potential for confusion. Under the guise of direct contact, the window is the opening gulf between conception and perception. It cries out that you have lived in error. You have taken the window as a symbol and not the image that it was. You have asked it to be something other than it is, and in so doing, you have betrayed yourself and... There is I am starting to think that none of this is very important. What is more or less reality? What is seen? When what is seen is incomplete or unclear? Or what is assumed, even if it is not seen? All of our problems, in a way, come down to this. Is reality here or beyond? On which side of the window?